Chapter 8. The Law of Perpetual Transmutation of Energy, transforming negative patterns into strength and opportunity. The silent movements beneath the earth. Every forest you ever walk into appears calm on the surface, quiet trunks rising into the sky, a soft carpet of leaves under your feet, but beneath that stillness is the world of a constant motion, roots pushing through darkness, minerals dissolve, water slips from stone to stone. Energy is always moving, always shifting, always transforming. Nothing ever stays what it is. A falling branch becomes food for the soil. Soil becomes nourishment for the tree becomes shade, shelter, or firewood. In nature, nothing remains fixed, everything in a state of becoming. This is the essence of the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. All energy is always moving, always changing form, and always seeking a higher expression. A negative pattern inside you, fear, anger, doubt, guilt, is simply energy that has not yet found its higher form. It is not an enemy, it is not a curse, it is not a flaw in your destiny. It is simply raw material like crude oil before refinement, like a river before it clears itself, like a storm before it releases new air. In the forest, the darkest soil produces the brightest blossoms, and in you, the heaviest emotions often conceal your greatest power. People fall into suffering when they misjudge the early stages of transformation. They experience fear and conclude something is wrong with me. They feel anger and believe I'm losing control. They face failure and think this is the end. But in nature, the dark seed does not believe it is dying when it cracks open. It is only becoming what it was meant to be. Human transformation follows the same law. Whenever you feel something heavy, something painful, something uncomfortable rising inside you, it is not there to destroy you. It is energy seeking another form. The question is simply, will you let it move, or will you bury it and force it to stagnate? Because energy that is ignored does not disappear. It becomes tension, anxiety, bitterness, and sadness, just like water blocked by dam becomes stagnant. But once you understand this law, you stop fighting the discomfort. You stop fearing the storm. You start asking a wiser question. What is its energy becoming? Rivers do not argue with rocks. Imagine a river flowing toward the ocean. Along the way, it meets sharp stones, falling logs, and steep cliffs. The river does not stop and complain. It does not freeze. It does not turn around. It simply keeps moving, reshaping itself around the obstacle until the obstacle becomes part of the journey. Over the years, the same river that was once blocked eventually caves a canyon, astonishes the world. Human negative patterns, hurt, trauma, insecurity are like the rocks in the river. At first, they disrupt your flow, they frustrate you, they slow your progress, but if you keep moving, if you refuse to let the obstacle define you, the same wound becomes the canyon where your wisdom forms. This law teaches you something profound. You don't conquer negative energy by force. You transform it by movement. You move your thoughts. You move your emotions. You move your habits inch by inch. You move your attention from fear to action, from doubt to curiosity, from anger to clarity. Even the smallest shift begins the transformation. Think about a stream. The water meets a stone. It does not shout, "Why is it here? Why is life unfair?" It glides around it, or over it, under it, or waits patiently until the stone itself dissolves. If you can become like a river, gentle but persistent, you can turn any negative pattern into strength. Fear becomes awareness. Anger becomes boundaries. Pain becomes compassion. Shame becomes humility. Loss becomes maturity. You begin to see the obstacles as part of the shape of your journey, not interruptions to it. This is how energy transmutes in real life, not in sudden flash, but in silent persistence of flow. The storm that clears the sky. Nature never wastes a storm. Every storm has a purpose: to break humidity, to balance pressure, to cleanse the air, to feed the soil, to prepare the land for new growth. Human storms, the emotional tempests you experience, serve the same purpose. Many people try to avoid their storms. They fear anger, sadness, disappointment, or loneliness. They distract themselves, numb themselves, avoid reflection, and delay healing. But an avoided storm becomes a Wi-Fi. A welcome storm becomes rain. When the law of perpetual transmutation is misunderstood, people suffer twice. First, from the emotion itself, and second, from resisting it. But when you understand that storms are temporary carriers of new energy, you begin to face them with courage, even curiosity. The storm inside you, whether it's heartbreak, loss, failure, or betrayal, carries hidden seeds. When the storm passes, it leaves behind clarity, resilience, purpose, and maturity. Just as lightning introduces nitrogen to the soil, enriching future growth, your inner storms introduce wisdom you could not acquire in the calm weather. To apply this law, you must learn the art of letting storms pass through you rather than trapping them inside. Here is how nature teaches you to do that. First, feel the wind without becoming the wind. Trees bend during storms, not because they are weak, but because they are wise. Rigid trees snap, flexible trees survive. You don't have to deny your emotions, you just avoid identifying with them. Say to yourself, "This is energy passing through me. It is not who I am." Second, let the rain fall. Crying is the body's way of releasing pressure. Just as rain cleans the forest floor, tears cleanse the soul. There is no weakness in the release, only clarity. Third, trust the clearing. No storm stays forever, no emotion stays forever. Everything that rises will fall, everything that begins will end. Everything painful will eventually open into a new horizon. When you trust this cycle, life no longer feels threatening. You stop fearing pain, you stop fearing change, you start participating in your own transformation. Mountains grow from pressure, not ease. Every majestic mountain on earth was once nothing but pressure. Blades collided underground, heat built, rocks cracked, the earth groaned, and through this stress the mountains rose. The universe hides the same pattern in your life. Pressure is not punishment, it is the construction. When something heavy presses on your spirit, duties, responsibilities, failures, disappointments, most people think life is too much. But in nature, pressure is creative. Pressure produces diamonds, mountains, crystals, and new continents. In humans, pressure produces clarity, strength, and character. The law of perpetual transmutation say that pressure is simply energy that has not yet completed its transformation. If you allow it, the same pressure that once crushed you becomes the force that elevates you. To use this law in daily life, practice this simple shift. Instead of asking, why is it happening to me? Ask, what is this shaping in me? Nature never asks for easy conditions. Nature adapts. Nature strengthens. Nature rises. So can you. When you face pressure, imagine the mountain forming beneath you. Imagine something solid rising from your challenges. Imagine your difficulties becoming the very platform you one day stand for. Because in nature and in your life, nothing rises without pressure. The sunflower that turns everything toward light. At the end of every day, after storms, after shadows, after wind, the sunflower stands with its face lifted toward the sun. Even when the sky is cloudy, the sunflower still turns toward a direction of light. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It simply aligns with the highest available energy. This is the most practical and powerful technique for applying the law. Where your attention goes, energy transforms. If you focus on fear, fear grows. If you focus on possibility, possibility grows. If you focus on wounds, you stay wounded. If you focus on power, you become powerful. Your attention is the sunlight. Whatever you turn toward begins to rise. Every day, consciously shift the direction of your focus. When fear arises, turn your attention to courage. Even a tiny steps. Courage is not loud. Sometimes it is simply, I will try again tomorrow. When anger rises, turn toward truth, not reaction. Ask yourself, what boundary is this emotion trying to protect? When sadness rises, turn toward gratitude, not to deny the sadness, but to remind your soul that the world is still contains life. When doubt rises, turn toward action. Action is the fastest transmutation of negative energy. Even small action begins to shift the entire pattern. When confusion rises, turn toward stillness. Stillness is the clearing where insight is born. The sunflower does not argue with darkness. It does not complain about clouds. It simply keeps turning. Transformation is the same. You do not need a dramatic change. You only need deliberate direction. With each shift in focus, even the smallest one, energy begins to transmute. Fear becomes clarity, pain becomes wisdom, Obstacles become opportunities, and your life begins to mirror the great lesson of nature. Everything can be turned into light. Even the darkest soil can produce a brightest flower. Even the heaviest storm can produce the clearest sky. Even deepest wound can produce a strongest soul. This is the law of perpetual transmutation, not the mystical secret, not a complicated formula, just the eternal truth of nature. Energy always rises when you guide it, and life always transforms when you participated in the transformation. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it. Please click like and subscribe for the next chapter, chapter 9.